Hey everyone, it's Lizzie and welcome back to my channel. We are doing a budget with a friend today. So if you don't know, this is a little series I've been doing periodically where I go through one of your budgets and I'll create a budget if I woke up in your shoes based on the information that you have provided me. So it is a Google form and I'll be sure to link it down below. I have a playlist of other people's budgets that I've reviewed and gone through, so I'll make sure to link that as well for you to look at other numbers, other budgets, and see if any of them can pertain or closely relate to your personal finances. So without further ado, we're gonna go ahead and dive into our friend's budget. So what I'll be going over is setting up a bill tracker and also a paycheck budget. So if you have a similar budget, you can budget along with me or just take different tips that I may be sharing and apply it to you if it benefits you. So let's go ahead and just go over some information that our friend had shared. So it is just her son, and she has 2 dogs. She gets paid weekly and she has a total of $6,050 in debt. It consists of medical debt. She has a Walmart credit card, a Capital One credit card, and a loan. She does not have a savings, so that is a big goal of hers, is to start an emergency fund and sinking funds. Also to pay off debt. So the sinking funds that she would like to start is a Christmas fund, car maintenance, and a pet emergency fund. So I think that all of those are great goals, especially starting an emergency fund, even if it's just the starter emergency fund. I think that that is wise, and that is something that we should go ahead and give suggestions on how we can map out a plan for her to go ahead and get this started. So these are some of the bills that she has throughout the month. So I just wrote it in here on a calendar, and I also put a little note of when she gets paid, which is on Thursdays every week. So in the month of September, she will receive 5 paychecks, which many people call it a magic month. So that will be really nice for her to receive that extra pay. So now we're gonna go ahead and walk through the process of how I set up a bill tracker. So let me just open up a separate page for me to do the bill tracker. So I like to have the calendar view next to me, and then I will mark in right over here the due date and the bill with the total amount. Okay, so right off the bat, I see that she has Weight Watchers. So you put the date, what the bill is, and that is $14. She pays her rent on the 3rd. So I'm gonna put rent, and that's $650. Her phone bill. And I'll do this for each of the expenses. So I went ahead and I wrote in on the bill tracker, and the next thing is you'll mark in how often you get paid. So I just wrote in up at the top already her paydays. The next thing, I like to highlight when I know we have to have the total funds ready to be able to pay for that bill. So with these top ones, she would need to have the total amount by the last day of the month. So for this one, I'm gonna highlight here. And this is just nice to visually see on this setup what you need to have ready to pay for that bill. So I have the highlighter all set up. Now is where you fill in the numbers. So if they're smaller numbers, I typically don't split up that payment unless you want to. But since she gets paid weekly, I think it will be fine for her to go ahead and just set the full amount aside for some of these smaller bills. For example, the Weight Watchers is $14. So I'm just gonna go ahead and mark the 14 to be fully funded on the last day of September, of her last pay of September. And I'm just gonna put a little dash here. And then also, I think on the 3rd, so let me just pull up a calendar here. So I'm just looking at my calendar. On the 3rd, she has her rent due, so she gets paid every Thursday every week. Then she would need to have the rent ready by the 30th. And let's see if there's anything else. And I think that that's it. So now is where we get out our calculator and we figure out the numbers and break it down. So since I'm just basing this off of the first pay, I'm assuming and I'm hoping that for her rent, she has already have money in her bank to cover some of this rather than paying that entire $650 for the second. So I'm assuming that she would have at least divided it up. Again, this is if I woke up in her shoes, I would have been setting money aside like how you see here. So by 4 paychecks, you take the $650, which is the full amount of her rent, and you divide it by 4. So $162.50 is what she should have been setting aside if I woke up in her shoes. So I'm just gonna base this scenario that way. And I'm just gonna fill in these numbers just the same. 162.50 all across this row. And that way, it's not gonna be such a big blow to her budget. The same thing for this phone bill, $152. I would have set it aside the 4 paychecks. So you take that total number and you divide it by 4. And that gives you $38. So I'm just going to set this aside. And if you hear my dog snoring, sorry. So actually, this is due on the 4th of October. So if I'm looking, let me pull up my calendar again. So yeah, she should have that completed by the 30th. And then let me just make sure. Okay, I think that that's it. And then Netflix, we have $16. So that's good to just make a note of this here. And I'm just going to put a little dash. Walmart for the $30. I think it's good to say that she can pay that full amount on the actual due dates. So I'm just gonna mark it off like that. And again, we're just gonna put a little dash. That way we don't get confused. $240. Again, I would be dividing that up by the weeks. So let's say it's 4 weeks of paid for the month. So $60 is what you would be paying or setting aside for that bill from your paychecks. And you just go on and on for each of the bills, the big bills that you have on your bill tracker. So I'm gonna go ahead and fill in the rest. So we have the bill tracker all filled out. Again, the first pay, for me, it's kind of hard to assume what you've already allocated for that bill. But again, I'm hoping that you've already done that. So this is the next step that you would do, is fill out your bill tracker, and then you can map out what your monthly budget is. So her total income that she receives is $2,200 from her pay, and then $675 for child support. She gets paid weekly, so the total amount of her income comes to $2,875. Now, I personally like using the percentage method, but you can do whatever works for you. So If you have debt, I would say maybe it's realistic for you to start with an 80% of what to live off of from your income. So where I got this number is I took the $2,875 and I multiplied it by the percentage. That gave me $2,300, and that is what is recommended by me to not go over that for your spending. So that goes for your bills, your variable spending, your cash envelopes if you are a cash envelope budgeter, anything that leaves your bank account. Try not to go over that percentage. You can adjust those numbers however you see fit, but this is kind of like a key that I will always reference when I'm creating my budgets. And then 20%, we're gonna apply some of that towards her savings specifically. So I will start off first building your saving account first versus you paying off debt, because anything can happen in your life and you want to make sure that you have the money in the bank and the cash on hand to, you know, if you have a flat tire or a medical emergency, you want to make sure that you have something set aside to cover you for an emergency, because eventually something will happen. I hope and I pray it won't be anything serious, but it's going to be, you know, things happen where you have to replace something, you have to renew your license, or things that you know is going to happen at some point. You should have funds set aside for those specific things. So starting a savings would be your month focus, is what my recommendation is, specifically your emergency fund. Get that up to at least $1,000, and then throughout the months you can constantly contribute something for your emergency fund and other savings while you're working to pay off debt. So that would be my month focus. So these are all of those same expenses that she has. We have her credit cards, her regular spending, and all of that totals $1,652. So to stay within that goal amount that we're referencing of that $2,300, so I'm gonna have my calculator over here for reference. We already know that $1,652 is going specifically for bills. So that is like non-negotiable. She has to pay these bills, and then the rest will be going to her variable spending and other things. So she had told me that she budgets these amounts for her variable spending. So she has her gas, groceries, her allowance, her son's allowance, going out to eat, some household spending, and then for her pet. So that in totals, so you see here, we have $648 that I would recommend to be within that 80% amount, but $670 is what she gave me that she budgets out for her variable spending. So we're already over that 80% of living expenses by $22. So it's not bad. I'm gonna get to some recommendations in just a bit, so hang with me. So total remaining to budget out for is $553. So I just wrote in here on the sinking fund section, Christmas, car maintenance, and her pet fund, and then I also added in down here emergency. So I don't know how much you're wanting to save for Christmas, what your like car registration or pet needs are, but I will definitely suggest that from that $500, put a big amount of that to your emergency fund right here. Allocate something for an emergency savings, because like I said, things can happen. I hope they don't, but as a part of life, you know, stuff does happen, so you want to be prepared. One of my recommendations for you would be, you know, you're over, based on my recommendation, $22. But if we see here, just looking at, and this is where you can review your budget to see what could you possibly cut. If you're wanting to grow a savings, if you're wanting to pay off debt, then sometimes it takes you looking over your fixed expenses and seeing what could you possibly cut. What is something that is a want, that is quote unquote a luxury, right? So for example, I see some TV streaming services. You have a few. So that's something that you can look into. And again, this is only a suggestion to kind of put that plant that seed in your mind and have you review this and see, hey, is this a possibility for me to cut this out? Because I have Amazon Prime, I have Netflix, I have Hulu, I have, let's see, YouTube Premium, I have a PlayStation subscription. So those are things that I would look into and see, hey, could we possibly maybe cut that down to maybe 2 streaming services? So maybe you could keep Netflix and Hulu and maybe not need Amazon Prime. I don't know what your personal situation is, but honestly, those things are what people might think as, you know, it's luxury. They're small amounts, but those small amounts for your fixed expenses will free up that money so that way you can apply it to your savings, or you can add that, what you were paying on those fixed expenses, you can add that as an extra debt payment. So I hope that that just gives you a different perspective and why I do love utilizing a percentage key when it comes to breaking down the budget. So this is what your monthly overview for September would look like. So now with the bill tracker completed, this is where you'll fill out your paycheck budget. And I just wrote in what her pay would be for the week. So as I mentioned, $440 and $135 is what she would receive. So that is a total of $575 as her week budget. So with the percentage formula, this again is where you will figure out, okay, well, what is it that you're gonna be paying for those bills? So let's go ahead and just figure that out and go through how I use the bill tracker along with the paycheck budget. Okay, so I have the bill tracker on this side for reference, and we're just gonna walk through her first paycheck so that way she's set up for success for the rest of the time and she can utilize this. So before I fill in the percentage formula, I'm just gonna go ahead and write in what her expenses would be for her to set aside in her bank account. Now she would withdraw this in cash if she likes to do that, but this is just what I personally do. So we're setting aside money for her rent. And this right here, it says that it is $162.50. And then right here, and these worksheets, you can print them. I just personally like importing them in my GoodNotes app. I've been asked a lot of questions, but all of the worksheets that I use are linked in my description box, available in my shop and other Etsy shops that I also support. So just keep that in mind. So once I write in that bill on my paycheck budget, I will check it off right here and then move on to the next thing. So phone is next, and that is $38. Then she has her Netflix, that is $16. Then she has her utilities, and that is $60. Personal loan, $31.25. You could always round this up or just keep it at 31, but I'm just leaving it exactly how it showed up on my calculator. So again, do whatever works for you. Car insurance is $22.75. And then her Xfinity is $46.25. So I'm gonna add this up right here. It gives me $376.75. I always like to double check my addition just to make sure that I did enter in the right number. Okay, good. So that matches up. So we're good with the bill tracker. Okay, so now we have to figure out what is remaining So you take the total income of the $575 and you subtract the $376.75. That leaves her with $198.25 to break down for the rest of her budget. So if we reference her monthly budget right here, $60 is for gas. So if we break this down based on the paychecks, I'm gonna do it based on 4 paychecks. So $60 divided by 4 paychecks, $15 is what I'll say we can add for her gas. She can bump it up to $20, whatever works. She budgets $300 for the month for groceries. So that roughly is about $75. So that's the same as my budget. So those are needs. The rest of the stuff, maybe her pet is a need as well. But remember, we have 108, and let me actually mark it up here, 198, what was it? 25. So we have $198.25 that we're left with to break down into her needs and then any savings, 198.25. So I'm gonna subtract the 15 and I'm gonna subtract the 75. Okay, just so I know where we stand. So those are all needs. She can add something for her pet. So she does $50 for her pet. I'm gonna divide that by the 5. So obviously, okay, yeah. That makes $10 for pet. And then her household needs, I would also say, yeah, that would be a need, but she budgets out $100 for household. So if we break that down by 5, so $20 is what she would allocate then if we're using that. So $20 for household. I'm honestly gonna say for you to focus on building a savings, because you really do need that, I would say maybe you could add like $5 for eating out and nothing for your or your son's allowance, because those are luxury. You have to focus on saving, and I would say that is a pressing matter for you to at least put something for your emergency fund. And then Christmas is coming, so yeah, definitely put something for Christmas. But I don't know what your goal is for Christmas or for anything like that, but let's just see where we stand right now with what we currently have. So I'm just gonna add up what is currently written in here and I'll mark it down. $120 is what this totals right now. Again, you can always play with the numbers, but eating out is a luxury, and any spending, like random spending, is also a luxury as well. So I'm gonna leave those blank for right now. Okay, so $78.25 is what is left over if we do not put anything for eating out or allowances. So let's see, out of curiosity, what is 80% of her income for the paycheck, okay? So we take the $575 and we multiply it by 80%. So that's $460. And then 20%, that's $115. Based on this, we can see, so if we add the $376.75 and we add the $120, we're at $496.75 for these categories here, the expenses and the variable. It totals $496. So for referencing this key, the 460, we see that we're over by $36.75. So as I had mentioned, if you see here, if she were to have gotten rid of Netflix, or maybe, I know some people, some people do this, I don't, like having this household expense. I personally don't have a household category. Groceries, I just include anything that I need for like cleaning supplies and different things. I just include that as part of my grocery. So you can shop like sales or different things for that. But again, you could do whatever works for you. I'm just giving a couple of suggestions just to plant that seed in your mind. So you might want to think about cutting some subscriptions, doing a couple of different things for that. But I think for this, it's not bad. To be over just a little bit from that percentage formula, it's not the end of the world. Sometimes I am over for what I had really wanted to plan out, and that's okay. But the main point is that I want to drive home is focus on your savings. So you don't have a savings account right now. I would say from this, I personally, you know, this is kind of an emergency and it's very important. So I would say from this $78 to allocate a lot of it to your emergency fund, maybe add $50 in here, and then you can break up the rest for these other goals. So that is what I would suggest. Now I want to mention the sponsor of today's video. It is sponsored by Skillshare. If you don't know what Skillshare is about, allow me to share. So Skillshare is an online learning community where they have so many different classes available for you to learn, from like illustration, graphic design, and the list just goes on and on. But one of the classes that I just loved so much is this one taught by Amanda Rach Lee. It's called Art Journaling for Self-Care, 3 exercises for reflection and growth. And I have been into like journaling, bullet journaling specifically, and one of my takeaways was that she says to journal like what you feel. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but you could just journal what you feel. And this is my bullet journal that I have actually been doing like prayers, and I share a lot of it over on my Instagram, so you can follow me over there. And that's what she kind of shares on this. So I would highly recommend checking this out. I'm excited because Skillshare is offering the first 1,000 subscribers who use the link in my description box. You will get 1 month free of Skillshare Premium membership. So that is amazing. I love it so much. I've taken like a whole lot of classes here. So there's definitely a lot that you can learn from Skillshare. But guys, I hope that you got a takeaway from today's video, and just know that budgeting, it doesn't have to be complicated. It just has to make sense for you and for your family. So thank you again so much for being here. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I hope to see you right here in a brand new video. Bye guys.